All right, fun fact, folks. Canada is the only Commonwealth country that is not awarded a Victoria Cross. That's right. We're stuck at 99. They were all given out by the British. Canada officially has its own Victoria Cross, but for whatever reason, they've not deemed it necessary or anyone worthy of getting this highest honor. But I can tell you one thing, Jess Larochelle 100% deserves this honor. If you are not aware of who Jess Larochelle is, let me fill you in. Jess Larochelle single-handedly fought off an entire platoon of Taliban by sniping them with M72 rockets. Not only that, he was one-eyed with a broken back and busted eardrums, and he fought them off like a Terminator. He didn't do enough, apparently. Now, this whole campaign to get Jess the VC was started by Bruce Moncour, who was in the RCR during the fiercest combat that Canada has seen in one hell of a long time during Operation Medusa, was wounded over there, and knew Jess personally. Now, his campaign is pushing not only the government, but also fellow Canadians to get involved and to put pressure on the government to say, like, hey, why haven't we issued a VC yet? This doesn't make any sense. What is the level of heroism needed in order to get this medal? Because it seems like you guys just don't want to issue it just based off bureaucracy. But Bruce is going to explain that all to you. And if you guys want to support the cause, you're definitely going to want to sign the petition. There's only a few days left. Today is the day of the anniversary of Jess's battle and his heroic act. And I'd love for you to also pick up a t-shirt. The t-shirts are on my merch store. All the proceeds are going to go to Bruce's organization to help keep him afloat and help him keep up the good fight. So enjoy the episode. I'm sure you're going to learn a lot, and make sure to share widely, make sure to subscribe, and make sure that you share with as many people as possible to share Jess's story and get Canadian voices and Canadian soldiers' stories widely disseminated, because Jess is a freaking badass, and unfortunately he's no longer with us, but he is one hell of a hero and he needs to be recognized with a Victoria Cross. Enjoy the episode. Peace. Today's episode is brought to you by FirmTech. Before we get started, I have to ask you one thing, and that is subscribe. 80% of you guys that are watching haven't hit the subscribe button. I know you're not freeloaders, so I know that you're going to take the opportunity and go hit that subscribe button, because this is how we build a stronger, healthier, harder to kill veteran community. And this is how the algorithm actually understands that you're paying attention. So I'd really appreciate it if you take the 15 seconds to go find the subscribe button, hit it, hit the bell notification, make sure to like the video so that we can get more visibility on what we're talking about here, and so that I can fulfill my promise to you, which is to deliver the highest quality content possible. All right, you know what you got to do. Let's get back to the show. Folks, today I'm sitting down with our guest, Canadian Armed Forces veteran, Bruce Moncour. Bruce served with the Royal Canadian Regiment and deployed to Afghanistan in 2006 and was part of the famous Op Medusa. He was wounded as well during a friendly fire incident involving American aircraft, and his survival and recovery became a defining part of his story, and it pushed him towards a new mission, which is standing up for fellow veterans. Since leaving the military, Bruce has been a relentless advocate. He founded the Afghan Veterans Association of Canada and later launched the not-for-profit Valour in the presence of the enemy with Uncle Rick Hillier, which works to ensure Canada properly recognizes the sacrifice and heroism of its soldiers. Through these organizations, he's fought for accountability, recognition, and better care for the men and women who served. And to boot, like I said before we hit record, I think Bruce is my spirit animal. He's a teacher like me. He was a reservist like me, and he likes kicking the shit out of Veterans Affairs whenever he gets a chance. So Bruce, welcome to the show, man. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here. I can't believe I didn't have you on.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, no, it's been a love-hate relationship with Veterans Affairs sometimes, but I've been trying to play it a little bit nicer, because the whole honey is better to attract than vinegar attract the flies. But yeah, things have been sometimes very, very low with VA,
Yeah.
but other times
I would say, not to disrespect anybody that's in an abusive relationship, but VAC is like that abusive relationship, whether it's physical or psychological. You rely on them because, like, either you're injured, you're uneducated, you have no financial resources, and they provide all that for you, but it's fucking hell because they abuse you during the whole process. You're like, oh, what do I do? It's the love hate that I feel every day, and I just try to not think about it for the most part. So
You know
I
what?
feel
I'll give you a quick story about that. In 2010, I met these two women that were giving presentations on PTSD, and they talked about that feeling of that expectation of being taken care of and that expectation not being met. And they called it sanctuary trauma. And I was like, whoa, wait, what's this? And they're like, well, it's like PTSD's ugly cousin. What ends up happening is, and you see it a lot with young children that are being abused, and they go to a parent and the parent ignores them. And another side of that would be people are coming to the government, expecting them to take care of them. The government turns its back on them, and they develop this. It's like basically the ugly cousin of PTSD. And in doing so, they actually cause more harm than good. So I actually put in for sanctuary trauma to see if they would actually recognize the condition. And so basically it was kind of like a catch-22. No, we didn't create sanctuary trauma, so now we're ignoring this, what we created. Or yes, we did create sanctuary trauma and admitting our faults. And it I ended up working with it's not just 400, and then they ended up coming, it's not just 20,000, and I explained it to them, and they used sanctuary trauma to a much greater effect than I did.
I've never heard of that. That is fascinating. I'm going to put it on my list of things I should probably apply for. Veterans Affairs. Shit. Wow. Thanks for that. So what I really wanted to focus on today and make sure that everybody in the community here is well aware of, which I'm sure I would say the majority know about the petition to get Jess Larochelle the Victoria Cross, but your organization presence, I'm having a hard time today, presence in Valour in the Presence of the Enemy is the organization that is pushing for a second time to ensure that Jess Larochelle, who, and you can tell the story, gets properly rewarded based on evidence for the first ever VC awarded by Canada since we've been able to award VCs, and literally since the Second World War, because I don't think there was even one issue for Korea. So let's go back into that. How did you get started with this organization, and why do you think Jess deserves the VC?
So this was a COVID situation, as all great stories of second hobbies are.
This is a COVID podcast, man.
COVID,
this is
right?
a COVID podcast.
So this was started.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah. I wrote and this is going to be crazy how I get to here, but I wrote a pilot, a TV show about an American president called, it was Grover Cleveland, and his similarities for his presidency and Donald Trump's presidency were crazy similar even back then. And now they're both the only two non-consecutive presidents to ever serve. So it's even gotten crazier since then. And so I was trying to pitch it to see if there's any feelers. And I got a hold of this guy in Canada who's like, hey, you got to do some Canadian content before you start trying to sell to the Yanks. I was like, all right, cool. And I'm not even kidding you. I'm washing my hair, and all of a sudden, eureka! I'm like, oh my God, I can do this about Jess and the other guys and how no one got the VC in Afghanistan. And I was like, I got to share this idea to a couple people. I got a hold of General Hillier. I got a team together. We wrote this documentary treatment up. We got to like basically the finish line where we're like pitching to History Channel. We're pitching to CBC. We're pitching to Chorus, pitching to everybody. And 100% just like, no, we're not interested. And we wrote this incredible treatment, and it was like so proud of it. And they're like, no. And they're like, and the reason was it wasn't BIPOC, so Black, Indigenous, people of color. And so it was essentially, but I think it was just no.
That was just a no.
I don't think that was, because we ended up making another treatment that was BIPOC, and then it was like, well, you can't tell the story because you're white. You'd have to have a BIPOC director. And then it just became, then we pitched it again, and they said, absolutely not. And so like, okay. And early on, we were trying to show them like, look, this could sell, this could be big. And I started our social media pages. And what we didn't realize was just how much our social media pages would take off. And, now we're over 30,000 counting on all our platforms. And eventually it became a very big, and we decided, well, let's pivot and let's make this a non-for-profit. And then then became, as you mentioned, we started our second petition. Well, with every new government, we're going to basically start from the top again, right? Or do our check, new petition, new campaign. So basically it's like once, Trudeau is gone, Carney came in, new prime minister, we'll put the feelers out again and see where it goes. That being said, so long story short to come around was how Valour came to be was a failed documentary pitch, and then realizing that there was something here with or without a documentary.
That's really cool. I mean, the journey often creates a completely different experience or a completely different result, which is often better than what your initial idea usually was. And I initially learned about it through Giselle, who was on the show a few years ago. And it brought to the attention the fact that I'm like, why don't we have a freaking VC? Like, we fought the longest war in Canadian history. It seems odd that I know the British guys that got it.
Yeah.
I know the Aussie guys that got it. There's tons of Medal of Valors in the United States. The Kiwis have. I'm like, wait, hold on a sec. That's true. How is there no Victoria Crosses? But and I'm curious to know what your take is on this. My take is that it's because the way the legal framework of the Afghan war, and I put it in air quotes because legally we weren't at war from what I understand. Now, maybe I'm totally wrong on that, but that's the way I've interpreted it. And they cannot go ahead and say, yeah, you deserve a VC in this war because you cannot get the VC unless you're in a war. Then all the other conflicts likely need to get reviewed too. And that's a can of worms that we're either too lazy or we're in a state now that we just don't want to have any part of the military brought to the forefront of Canadian psyche, because that would mean that we go to foreign countries and we hurt people. I don't know. Maybe I'm way off, but I'd love to hear your
word
thoughts.
You said.
All right, guys, we need to talk about your dick. Not in a jokey locker room way, but in a life-saving way. You see, erectile dysfunction isn't just a bedroom issue. It's one of the earliest warning signs of cardiovascular disease. And veterans, we're at a higher risk than civilians. TBIs, stress, meds, pain, poor sleep, you name it. That's where FirmTech comes in. They make the world's first smart erection ring, and it's kind of a game changer. It's called the Tech Ring, and you wear it overnight while you sleep, and it tracks your nocturnal erections. That's right, real data right to your phone. Wondering what meds, supplements, or diet changes actually work? Now you'll actually know, because when you track it, you can hack it. Discreet, easy to use. You can even wear it during sex to enhance your intimate moments with the missus. They call it the dick bit, and yeah, it actually works. In fact, rings are more effective than pills that you'll get from the VA. And FirmTech's Tech Ring, it's research proven, effective, safe, no side effects, just results. So if you're serious about your health and your performance and maybe a few better rolls in the hay, resolve in 2025 to put a ring on it. No shame in that game, sir. Use code DMorrow at checkout for 15% off your first purchase. Link is in the description.
Is can of worms. The fear is setting a precedent. And that is the biggest fear, especially with bureaucracy. And bureaucrats hate more work. And so when we had a meeting with the then CDS, Wayne Eyre, he was basically ordered to take the meeting by then Minister Anita Anand based on the 20,000 emails she received from our organization. Wow. So he wasn't going to meet with us until it was like, okay, you have to meet with these people because I can't read any of my emails and they have flooded my inbox. And so he met with us and he's like, we talked to the then CDS of Britain and they're like, we don't want you to do this because we don't want to have to do this either. And so Australia, like you said, in terms of reviews, not giving out the medal, but in terms of reviews, the Americans and Australians. Well, now the British have jumped on because of that SAS Rogue Heroes. Paddy Mayne Major Mayne is looking at possibly being reviewed because he got the DSO 4 times. And the question begs, well, because he was Irish, did he not?
Irish.
Was it
he was
the
a freaking
Irish?
Savage?
And he was a beast, right? By all accounts, he was like, just incredible story. I mean, obviously It's been a little bit of Hollywoodization. I mean, he was a barrister and a lawyer, not this crazy guy that they're depicting, which makes for great entertainment. But the thing is now Britain's reviewing them. And in fact, this is actually Britain's second review. Back in 1907, Britain didn't give the Victoria Cross posthumously. And so in the Boer War, they gave it to a soldier whose dad was a major general. And in doing so, when he died, and in doing so, they decided, what they used to do is they used to say, hey, would have got it had he had lived. And then they said, okay, well, now we're going to go back up to 40 years and look at all these guys and say, okay, he would have got it had he had lived. And they went back 40 years and rectified that and made it so that all these posthumous VCs would be given out, and then set the precedents. Britain has done a review, despite what they say. Unfortunately, in the 90s, King George V put forward the 5-year rule after World War II, which was basically saying, unless we give you the VC in the 5 years after World War II, we won't review anyone else.
So that begs a question: like, why is there a reticence to issue it? Is it to make it more rare and more coveted, or is there something else there? Because the way I see it, this is a great way to instill pride within not only the military, but in the country, because the country is who sent us to war. It is a shared responsibility. So you should, whether you agree with the war or not, I don't even agree with the war, I fought in it.
Yeah.
But you should still, recognize it's the act to show this guy is an example of bravery for our country. And you can all try to aspire to that at some point, whether you agree with the war or not. You don't have to be a warrior to show bravery. And that's how I see the Victoria Cross. But what is the reticence in opening it up and being like, yeah, maybe we need to issue like 10 Victoria Crosses, and we have to do all the paperwork and do all the, I would gladly be part of that committee to do the research. Like, you wouldn't even have to pay me. I would do the research with a group of other veterans. But what is the reticence?
Tons of guys. I'll just put this statistic to you first. Since the creation in 1854, which the British military fought tooth and nail. And the reason it was instituted was Queen Victoria and the British public were enamored with the stories coming back from the Crimean War. They didn't care about the battles, but they were so interested in this one newspaper reporter was sending home these tales of personal acts of bravery that were so intense and so incredible that it captured the public's eye. And Queen Victoria wanted to basically reward that with the Victoria Cross, and the military fought it. And then they eventually embraced it. And since that time, since 1854, 1,354 Victoria Crosses have been issued. And you got to think about of the tens of millions of soldiers that fought for the British Commonwealth since 1854 to win the Victoria Cross and to live to receive the Victoria Cross is actually rarer than winning the lottery. So you literally have a better chance of winning the lottery than the Victoria Cross. So it's not that we're giving it out
0.001%.
Literally. The other aspect of this is that when we took this over in 1993, we were giving ourselves the tools at which we can then present our own soldiers with their brave acts of bravery without depending upon Britain to recognize that. And you mentioned Korea a little bit earlier, and I'll bring to your attention Ernest Poole, who was a stretcher bearer and went in during Korea, and during a battle was bringing a wounded back and bringing ammunition forward, and he was killed in the line of action. And both his commanding officer and the overall Canadian commanding officer of the war recommended him for the Victoria Cross, and Britain downgraded him to the DSO. So, and our argument should be, well, now we've taken it over, we should then go back to that recommendation from our own and perhaps look at Mr. Poole and say, hey, maybe you should be a Victoria Cross recipient or the Canadian Victoria Cross recipient. So, and then coming forward for not giving the Victoria Cross out during the Afghan war, when it was early on, and General Hillier has said this a few times, early on in the war, it was kind of like, it was the first real war or conflict, as you had said, that they had. And they thought when Jess did what he did, they gave him the Star of Military Valor, thinking that somebody else would come along and do something more, incredible.
More
valorous, I guess, meet the criteria. And he even told General Omar Lavoie, our brigade commander at the time, our battalion commander, that, hey, this was close. Like, he was really close to the Victoria Cross. And he's even said, looking back on it, I regret not giving him the VC. Remember, a lot of those guys from General Hillier on didn't really have. I mean, there's a bit some hot spots in Bosnia, but from like the 70s until the 9/11, there wasn't really much in terms of anything to do. Whereas the Americans and Australians had Vietnam, the Brits had the Falklands War. So there is an element that we just didn't have the guys that had the expertise of combat that making decisions on to give these medals out. And we're just also have an issue with, I think, humility, where we honestly sometimes feel too humble for our own good.
I heard a really good analogy, and I don't know if it was from you or maybe it was from Giselle, but it's kind of the analogy is if you have, Wayne Gretzky, best hockey player to ever exist. He gets inducted into the Hall of Fame. Okay, so nobody now can get inducted to the Hall of Fame because you can never match what he did, although OV beat his goal record.
Right.
Okay, so is that what we're saying now for Canadian Victoria Cross winners? What is the threshold? Because it's kind of subjective. It is a feeling, but it's also how many people did you save, and did you confront death, and did you confront fear and go head on into danger so that either your platoon could live, civilians could live, you could turn the face of a battle on its head. Like, these are the things that if you read the historical VC winners, you go, well, Jess is definitely in line with that. Like Smokey Smith, I read his. He was firing rockets at freaking Panzers, just fighting off an entire platoon of Germans so that all his buddies are shot up around him. He's shot up, but he kept on fighting. Boom, VC. So I don't know how you could possibly have a higher threshold considering what Jess did. And I'll turn it over to you. Let's get into what Jess actually did on the battlefield that deserves the Victoria Cross.
100%. So, I mean, the story is just incredible. Is Jess Larochelle is with 9 Platoon. He is in Charles Company. They are set to go to Strong Point Center to relieve the relieve the people there. One of the labs hits a mine on the way there and goes down, so they're shorthanded. When they get there, they're told, look, there's an attack that's imminent. Like, we know it's coming. It's going to happen at any moment. You're shorthanded. We understand that, but, within moments, we expect this attack. And so they had to man they needed somebody in the observation post, but because they were shorthanded, usually you put 2 people in there. They only put the 1. I was told that the Section 2IC asked for volunteers. Jess put his hand up. Now, to me, that's a new element of the story. That is new information that kind of makes it more incredible, is that he volunteered knowing that this was happening. So can you imagine that walk with your C9 rifle to that observation post, knowing like, okay, by yourself, like, so he gets there, but then moments, a rocket propelled grenade hits his position. Now, it knocks him unconscious. It also breaks vertebrae in his neck and in his back. It blows out his right eardrum. It detaches one of his retinas, and he has a severe concussion, and he's bleeding yellow liquid out of his ears, okay? When he comes to, he realizes that another rocket had hit his section. 2 of his section, Private Blake Williamson and Sergeant Darcy Tedford, have been killed, and 3 others are grievously wounded. There are 40 Taliban attacking this position right now, and they are literally about to overrun the Canadian position. Now, you have to remember, if you get we all knew, if you get captured, you're probably going to be publicly beheaded on a video that's going to be sent out. You do not get captured by any means possible. And so Jess comes to. Now, with those injuries, you have to think, if I'm in a car accident and have those injuries, I am tied to a headboard and I'm airlifted to a hospital and I'm listed in critical condition. So critically injured, he crawls through the C6 and he starts firing. Now, he runs low on ammunition. What does he do? He picks up these pile of M72 rocket launchers and starts detaching them, pulling them apart. Okay, taking the rubber stoppers off. Now, you also got to remember now, when he starts firing at these attacking incoming Afghanis, he is now firing. He's firing, but he needs to make sure his backblast is clear. Because you can't, if he fires too close to the mud brick wall, it's going to blow back and blow him forward. So you're exposing yourself to the enemy, firing them. Once you've fired, now the the rocket is a useless metal tube and you're exposed for all to see. Well, he does that 15 times. Not only that, but at the 15 times that you fire this thing, are you doing more damage to your broken neck and your broken back? Yeah, 100%. And in doing so, he single-handedly repels these 40 attacking Taliban. One person told me, and I can't remember who it was, but said that he was hitting them directly and blowing them to pieces.
With M72.
72s. So they run away. They run. So here we have a soldier that is critically wounded, saves lives, changes the course of battle, and shows exemplary bravery in the face of the enemy, valor in the face of the enemy, valor in the presence of the enemy. All criteria is checked. And not to mention, now we have some new elements. So after the attack is done, he volunteers to man the position for another 12 hours. And you got to remember now, the adrenaline is wearing off. The pain is setting in. I remember in the video where we have the interview that we have, you can see on our YouTube page, he talks about how he couldn't stand upright. He was falling over because his equilibrium's off. So gets relieved, goes back for the ramp ceremony, carries the casket onto the plane, and then puts his hand forward and says, "Hey, I think I'm hurt."
Wait, hold on a sec. The ramp ceremony is days later.
A day later. Yeah.
Holy shit. So he waited
until
like 36, like so there was the initial attack, then another like 12 hours manning the OP, then fly back to CAF, do the ramp ceremony, and then be like, yeah, I think I'm busted up.
Yeah, 100%.
That is insane.
And for that, he gets the second highest medal, Star of Military Valor, which I think is, I remember hearing it when coming back. So I was already injured, right? So I'm, brain surgery, 5% of my brain removed, shot, massive occupational therapy and stuff like that. Hold on. Guys, you can't make noise. I'm sorry.
Yeah, this is a family-friendly podcast. A kazoo in the background is perfect. I'm keeping it in, Bruce. I'm keeping it in.
Thank you. No, I know. Anyways, they do this ramp ceremony. He comes back. He's doing much, and he has to have these surgeries and things like that. But I remember being home in Windsor doing my recovery, and then the guys coming back from tour and hearing this story and being like, "Oh, that's not a VC. I don't know. If that's not a VC, I don't know what is." And it's even from that day, everyone from that tour was like, "Yeah, he got robbed. He got in." And one of the guys, so I was at the second annual Jess Larochelle bike ride in commemoration to him in Restoule. And I finally got to meet his mom in person. I finally got to meet his family. And one of the guys that was there in his platoon was there. And he told me it wouldn't just be for Jess, this VC. It'd be for all of us that deployed. We would all feel like we got recognized if Jess got recognized. We would all feel that this was our VC, that this was our Afghan VC. And I think that element of that is not actually seen by the powers that be, that just how much that VC would mean to 40,000 people that deployed.
And I'll add to that too, there's no national war memorial to this war in Ottawa.
I think they just opened it actually.
Did they?
They did, yeah. The problem I have with it is basically they made it an Indigenous war memorial. It's got a circle, and the original design, they booted it and took out basically everyone's vote and went with this Indigenous artist. They made it all identity politics, which I'm sorry, but and it took longer to build than the actual war itself. For me, that monument and that it doesn't represent anything that I fought in or it doesn't represent a place where I feel I can be, where I can remember the soldiers, the 13 soldiers I knew, trained with, passed away, and the more that committed suicide afterwards. 26 total guys I know are gone. And I'm sorry, but just the way the way the government fucked around on this is, it just leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
Well, it's indicative of a larger issue, which I've touched on the show, is that it's not just a lack of respect. It's a purposeful indifference. I would take lack of respect any day, because then at least you give a shit enough to disrespect. But it's an indifference. We don't like until there was an overwhelming amount of emails in a minister's inbox, did they even consider, you got to take this guy's request.
Let me tell you this. So for the first 2 years that we did this, we did the petition We did we had, we had questions at ACFA committee. We had all this stuff, and they didn't actually mention Jess's name until he died, like officially. So like, not even just like, no, we're not going to do this. They didn't actually say his name for years. And it didn't dawn on me, but I was like, oh my God, saying his name is actually a victory for us. That's fucked up, man. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
100%.
the fact of the matter is like, I need you. I'm going to turn the light on real quick. I'm getting turned. I'm getting to the point now where it was like, oh my God, like they said his name finally years later. And I got excited. And I remember thinking, man, that's
fucked up.
Yeah. So
because like that's the level that we're expecting now. We've been, and I compare this. Obviously, we're not American, but I compare this to like our Vietnam era moment where the Vietnam veterans were pariahs when they came back because nobody wanted the war, but it wasn't the soldiers' fault that they got drafted and got sent to a war that was a complete and utter disaster. And that completely changed American politics, right? Because it was like never again. And clearly they did it again in the global war on terror. However, we have this very small group because there's like 40,000 of us.
And you know what? I've heard as low as 32.
I think it's less. I think it's less because so many of us deployed 2, 3, 4 times.
So they're counting line serials.
One. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think,
and then
I did a release, an ATIP, and they said that 32,000 stars were given out. Oh
wow. Okay.
So
yeah, but including bars too, or just the star?
The star itself were cast.
Okay. Yeah. So they're not counting the bars then. If they should also throw in the bars, and then you'd have. Well, I mean,
then it would put you to 40. Yeah.
Yeah, it would put you to 40.
Yeah.
But that being said, we have this inability to reconcile with the fact that there was the same people doing all the warring for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it smashed us, and reservists too. Like I was a reservist. They was 1/3 or like 1/4 of pretty much the entire war. And especially near the end, it was like all reservists.
When I went in 2006, it was every infantry section had 2 reservists. By the end, it was 4. So if you're front soldiers, was 20 to 40% of the 101 for military valors and the military medal of bravery. Guess how many reservists got them?
0.
4.
Okay.
4 out of 100, and that's up to 40% of your fighting force. And you got to know if I am a RCR or a PPCLI soldier, I'm going to give it to my own guys before I give it to a reservist. I mean, and I don't blame them. I get 100%. But here's the thing is the Americans have actually gotten 3 of those medals compared to the 4 that the reservists got.
Wait, say that again. What do you mean they got 3 of our medals?
Americans were bestowed or given 3 Canadian medals during Afghanistan, and reservists got 4.
So they were awarded medals for bravery by Canada.
Yeah. So one actually got the Star of Military Valor, and 2 got the 3rd medal.
Oh, this is a fascinating conversation. Okay, so Jess clearly is like an M72 sniper and was like a one-eyed deaf killing machine.
Yes.
But when he does the ramp sort, like all of that is like, holy shit. And you're mentioning something really important, especially for folks that aren't military. Like the backblast thing is a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, especially like those mud walls, like you can drop a JDAM on them. They don't. And if I'm this close to the wall, I'm getting fucked up.
Yeah.
And so he's like likely putting his head like over the freaking like that. If he had HESCO bastions or sandbags to actually launch these things. So when you say exposed, like it's
the backblast area is almost as far as the actual rocket. Like, when you're taught, you need to make sure so far behind you is clear.
And so, so Jess ultimately passed away. Is last year or 2 years ago?
2 years ago, August 30th, 2023. And so it was 17 years. And so basically, he never recovered. Never.
I was going to say, and this is my point, right? Is this an indictment of like just our inability to care, or just his injuries were just so bad? It was just impressive that he made it that far down the line.
His family said, and I don't want to get too much because they might see this and I don't want to upset them, but the family have said, like, look, he's almost died a dozen times. Like we thought he was a goner for
Crazy.
the last 17 years. And finally it was just massive organ failure. It was nothing, it was nothing, nefarious or not, nothing PTSD related. It was a health related death. And so, I mean, 40 years old, you can't say like, somebody that was perfectly healthy at 22 and passes away. I mean, it's clear that the injuries and the surgeries and the damage done from that day. I mean, really, he died that day and just kind of was a ghost for the next 17 years. I mean, thankfully his family had those 17 extra years and were able to talk to him and be able to be with them. And he was able to, tell them he loved them, and they were able to say it back to him. And I'm so happy they had that extra time. But by their own account, he wasn't the same after.
I mean, those are, traumatic injuries that, like the amount of damage, your body can only hold on for so long, but he was so young, right? So that was likely the biggest factor in his favor. But over the years, 17 years of just that accrued damage, the body can only handle so much. One thing that I'm really trying to hammer on, and I'm doing an event this Saturday, is I don't like the fact that we're the only country in NATO that doesn't have dedicated veteran care at a frontline medical level. We got rid of all the hospitals. The last one was down the street for me, the St. Anne's Hospital. It is unacceptable that we don't have a gold-plated facility for the few veterans that we have. We could have the best system in the world just for veterans. It wouldn't take that much, because I'm fed up of hearing about veterans that have to wait in line like everybody else, and they're suffering.
We're under 10,000 veterans from the World War II. Like we're below.
Oh yeah, I mean there's.
Yeah. So I mean our veteran numbers. I think a couple of years ago I saw 571,000 total veterans, and from that, just it's humbling to be part of that, but it's also humbling to see how much the veterans have rallied around this cause. I have not had anything negative or nasty or horrifically divided, because it's a lot of times we are a very hard group to unite.
Oh, you think?
I have, and
it's brutal, man.
I mean, I'm not I'm not breaking any news here, but the fact that I have never felt, I see other people's pages, veterans pages, and they have to remind people about decorum, or they have to be like, if you don't like my stuff, or, and then some people that are doing really good things, like Kyle Scott with the medals, and where he has to remind people look, man, I'm volunteering to do this. I'm not, and people are ripping him apart. I haven't had any of that, and thankfully, and I'll knock on wood, but I haven't had anybody absolutely be, I mean, you get a couple yahoos here or there, you just block or whatever, but for the most part, it's been absolutely, I mean, I had 110 veterans associations endorse this. 110. The Royal Canadian Legion endorsed this. Think about that. The Legion actually freaking stood behind something.
They actually stood behind a veteran cause?
Never happened. I've never.
Good for them, Legion. Hey,
crazy.
They're figuring it out after 150 years.
Patriot love. Wounded Warrior. I mean, you name it. City councils are passing. We just had Windsor, Ontario just passed a resolution. Ottawa. We're working on Ontario legislation. Doug Ford and Scott Moe are talking in reference to saying, to give people, we're hoping that by Remembrance Day, they're going to pass a resolution supporting this as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed, this goes through. But I mean, that's insane, man. You're having basically representation of millions of Canadians, not just okay, we have 9,000 signatures on this petition, but you have literally other organizations that represent millions of us that have put their name behind this. And then the fact that the Conservatives put it in their platform, they ran on this in the last election. I mean, that's a major party has done this. Not to say, I mean, how much Erin O'Toole helped us, how much the NDP with my partner, when she was a member, helped us. It was her idea to do the petition. It was her idea to do the letters. And so she actually, because she's an NDPer, she taught me the grassroots. So it was crazy when I'm teaching my board and the other people about these NDP tactics, and they're like, oh, I don't know, that seems a little, and then when it works and it works so well, they're like, wow, this is really something, right?
So guys are on to something. Right. All right.
So it was kind of like when you see two worlds collide, and that was kind of neat for me to see. So
yeah, no kidding. And so the petition is still going strong. How do people sign it? And then when's the due date for them to get their signature on it?
So the petition E6661 is it's on the House of Commons site. But if you go onto our Facebook page, I mean, if you could share a link for when you post this, just go on there. Also, a reminder, you got to do a secondary email, a confirmation email. Make sure you follow through on that. And we're looking, hopefully, by Remembrance Day, last petition had 14,129 signatures. We're looking to get more than that. So we're about 2/3 of the way there now. So we're looking to hopefully and we know that once the poppies start going on people's chest, it'll amp up a bit, and we're hoping that we can get it up to at least 20,000 and signatures, and then it ends on November 20th.
That's phenomenal. I mean, I've signed it, and I've sent it to my non-military friends, just because, I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer, and I like democracy. Like, just put that, like, I like when democracy works. Let's just put it that way. This would be not, we've mentioned a lot of things for the military community, but this is like a win for like grassroots democratic stuff that I'm losing a lot of faith in. I'll be honest. This would be like a win for Canada. There's so many big names behind this. I can't imagine how this doesn't win popular support. And this is what politicians ultimately are here to do. Like, hey, you mentioned there's likely, the organizations represent millions of Canadians. Well, there's only about 40 million of us. If you get 1 million Canadians represented around this issue, this is something that if a politician doesn't listen and they don't take action, like, well, why do we have you here? Like, you're not doing the will of the people, which I thought is why we voted you in the first place. So
during the summer months, just to interject, during the summer months, our social media pages hit 10 million impressions. So we were very feasibly reaching 1 in 4 Canadians during the summer months. Wow. So, I mean, this is resonating. I think, obviously, with the nationalist movement after the tariff and the threats of the 50, Canadians have really started coming around to our page. And I've never seen, like, our numbers since March have just absolutely exploded to a point where I've never seen it before, And so it's been humbling, to say the least, to see all these Canadians looking at, the content we're creating and seeing our message. And, it was when I did Jess's ride in July, it was so crazy because all of that came from what I started. And it was almost like a beautiful side effect that I couldn't even imagine happening. And I had nothing to do with, and these people did this. And for a lot of Canadians hopefully that learn about Jess and know Jess's name, is that before I started this, Jess was forgotten. I mean, a few people in battalion had heard his story, but ultimately the greater public did not know who Jess was. And to a degree, it's still don't, but a whole lot more people. Now, Historica Canada has a page on Jess. He's got a Wikipedia page that you can look Jess up on. There's hundreds of articles about Jess that you can look up. People are writing stories and articles about this review and arguing whether or not this should happen. And even if we get the review or not, I mean, that's a beautiful thing too, is that the stories of these soldiers are being shared and are being listened to. And so the memory of these Star of Military Valor winners is incredible. In particular, I don't know if you know this, there's 25 that have been issued, but only 18 are public. The other 7 are ghost medals. And the
hands-off guys?
Yes. So the one in particular, the Chinook incident in the valley, where it's on fire, and the squirrel, the JTF soldier pulls him off of carries the guy that's injured out of the burning Chinook and goes up a mountain while fighting off. I mean, that story itself too, I think, needs to be heard. I think enough.
This is the first I hear this. This is the first I hear this. So, and I'm kind of like in this world. So that's wild.
I mean, these stories need to be heard, and you can see all them. They're all written on our page if you want to read them about them. But yeah, essentially we've talked to these guys, and there's like, man, some of the people that were there, a medic in particular that since retired, who's not bound by secrecy, basically said, like, look, this JTF soldier carried this critically injured soldier who was shot because the shots came through the bottom of the Chinook and had one of his arteries was hit. It snapped an artery, like was in real danger of dying, bleeding out. So he carried him and did a fighting withdrawal up a mountain to the high ground so that the medic could do first aid on this guy and others. And the story is just like, when do you ever hear about somebody carrying a body out, or an injured soldier out of a burning Chinook and firing with the other hand
uphill? I mean, that's and you talked about film production, and that was like your initial intent. The unfortunate reality is that Canada doesn't really have the big guns like the Americans do. Like the Americans are the world's best storytellers, and they love a great story. And what we do is kind of hokey, and unless it's got Paul Gross in it, like forget it, it's not going to happen. But like you on your site, I'm just on the Heroes Among Us, all of these individuals that are here, like their stories are absolutely insane. Like Pat Tower, Will McDonald, like that battle at the schoolhouse. Like I know secondhand from guys that were there, but they're like, it was just like a hail of metal, and these guys are just charging into it. And we have no Hollywood to show these stories bigger level to actually captivate people into the story and ask questions to be like, wow, Canadians did this? It's like, hell's yeah, dude. And there's more. Like we can go back to Korea. We can go back to the Second World War. We don't have the storytellers. I did my best to act like the fat electrician. I don't know if you know his YouTube channel, and do Jess's story. And I got 10,000 views, which was great because it was there was no editing. It was just, I got right into it. I'm like, oh, I think I need to do all of these stories. And the wild thing, dude, I'm looking at your site. And I was like, wait, Jean-François Belzile. I'm like, what? I'm like, I know this guy. Like I was on pre-training with him. He was a reservist here. He's like one of my best friend's best friend.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on a sec. I didn't know he even had this Star Military Valor. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And so like I am 1 degree of separation from this guy, and I don't even know the story. That's how much of a black box this all is. So are you going to do any video productions on this? Like, are you going to
We're looking at it. We're exploring. I wrote a book this summer, and the publisher that I had, a couple of them have basically said, books don't sell. This would make a better podcast.
Because it's Canada,
so
right?
Break it down into episodes. So I'm in talks with a couple things in that way. It's just having the time and the money to do it. Is very difficult thing to do. But the other thing is going back to what you said about the degrees of separation and not knowing these stories, is it's so like just incredible to be able to bring these, blips of what these guys have done and what Jess has done and what Willie did. And I wanted to go back to the Willie McDonald and that day, August 3rd, 2006. So Willie McDonald made a run with Bryce Keller and Mark Bedard and the C6 gunners, and they ran to the position, and Willie McDonald, it was like a 400-meter dash to relieve this position. And Willie McDonald was
given 400-meter dash is a long dash, my friend.
Yeah. So Willie McDonald, that's like Pickett's charge, in Gettysburg. So Willie McDonald was given the Star of Military Valor, and he put both Bryce Keller and Mark Bedard up as well. And so what ends up happening is because Bryce Keller dies and you need 2 witnesses, Mark Bedard doesn't get the medal. What ends up happening is Bryce Keller is given the medal posthumously, and because they can't, there's nobody, and the only way that Bryce Keller could get the medal posthumously is that Mark Bedard made the run with him and witnessed it himself, and they didn't do the extenuating circumstances to give Mark Bedard the medal as well. So there's a lot of that too. There's a lot of bureaucratic things where you think they would make a case of to write this statement you'd have to do extenuating circumstances, blah blah blah. But no, they're sticking to the letter of the law, and you're like, man, you really need to think. If Mark Bedard made the run, and the only way that Bryce Keller could have gotten the medal is if Mark Bedard made the run, well, then give Mark Bedard the medal. And they even came back to Willie and said, well, just tell somebody to say they saw it. and lie.
Just go against your entire code of ethics
and integrity.
That is such a bureaucratic response here in Canada. Like, yeah, just make it up.
But I mean, why would he need to make it up? Because he watched Bryce Keller do the exact same thing that he did. Just that Bryce Keller unfortunately passed away moments later. And so that's the type of stuff that we're looking at, is saying like, look, okay, maybe Mark Bedard doesn't deserve Victoria Cross, but he deserves something. And I think we're going to see a whole lot of that. And if we don't stand up for ourselves, we're going to lose that. And, you know, I learned a lot from my advocacy in terms of arguing for my Veterans Affairs office to be kept open. I don't know if you remember the Fantino situation where a bunch of vets went to Ottawa to ask Julian Fantino.
And it turned into a big clusterfuck. Like, it was like so unprofessional.
I was in there. I was one of those.
You're in the room, right?
In there, yeah. So that's how my whole advocacy started about 15 years ago. I was in the room asking for him to keep my Veterans Affairs office open in Windsor. And then I started Huffington Post started asking me to write things. And then I wrote that why no one should join the Canadian Forces. It exploded. And I've had dozens of people tell me I got out of the army because of that. Like, dozens of people tell me I got out of the army after that piece. Like, that was it. Like, they must have been like, the military must have been so bad with all these.
The alarm bell went off in Ottawa. It's like, woo!
Oh my God. Like
there's a dissenter. Get him.
Just like, yeah. So, and then O'Toole brought me on and I did the advocacy stuff and I was, did that. Okay. And I had I butted heads with Kent Hare and Seamus O'Regan a little bit. And then I started Valour, and it was so much better than fighting because I'm doing something that I love. I'm doing something. I love telling stories. I love history. I love doing this. So the fact is that I am in such a better place emotionally because of the fact that I am now arguing for these guys. I'm not arguing or fighting. I'm still talking to a brick wall, but at least I'm talking to a brick wall about something I like.
Mm-hmm. I think I'm going to make that into a t-shirt.
Yeah,
I think that's t-shirt worthy.
Yeah.
Brick wall talking, as long as it's about something you like.
Yeah.
There you go. That's mental health for the Canadian Armed Forces veteran 101. Just talk about to the brick wall about something you like and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
But on the topic of like mental health and just being well, I think we're talking about the memorials and the VCs and like what it means to like show bravery to Canada. There's a wound that's deep, and you talked about sanctuary trauma. I've talked about, I can't even remember the word right now, but it's another type of trauma that, you get from institutional trauma, whatever you want to call it.
Institutional.
Yeah, where like a moral injury. That's it. That's the buzzword for it. So moral injury, but ultimately, I call it just a broken heart. It is a broken heart because we recognize that, oh shit, but we actually, like, the war was like a relationship. It was a deep emotional relationship, and the guys we fought with and the battles we had, and then we came back, we had this idea that somehow we would be just not worshipped. I didn't want any of that. I didn't want just the respect that, hey, you guys did something really hard for the country, you volunteered to go, that's it, and not put us into this bind where we have to constantly fight. It's like, please, sir, can I have some more? Yeah. It makes us almost feel like beggars, and it is a disgusting feeling.
That's going to give you 35 cents on the dollar for what the World War II guys got. Or here is a war memorial that's going to take 10, 11 years. Here's no VC. Oh, by the way, we went to Afghanistan because Karl Rove and George W. Bush were mad we didn't join the Coalition of the Willing, and we compromised in 06, 05, and said, hey, instead of going to Iraq, how about we up our level of commitment in Afghanistan?
Go to Panjwai.
Go back down to Kandahar. We can alleviate your forces so that you can send them to Iraq. And basically, this wasn't about fighting the war of terror. This is about Machiavelli. This is about two pipelines. This is about lifting the mad cow ban, and this is about renewing the 10-year softwood lumber deal that we do with the United States. So this was all about money, dollars and cents. And so 100 more that committed suicide, 2,100 injured, tens of thousands of mental health issues. That was also two pipelines could be built, softwood lumber could be shipped, and the lift of the ban on beef. So let's not pretend like this isn't like we did the politician's job, and now, we're asking for a little piece of ribbon and some tin. And so it's not too much to ask when we want to get recognized for these incredible acts of bravery properly, because it's valor unrecognized. And that is the biggest shame of it all. That is the biggest thing, is to not recognize it. And you go back to the 90s, the medic pocket took 10 years to recognize that. And now you're still looking at, I've got dozens of soldiers going back to World War I that you look at and you're like, really? They didn't get the VC? There was it, Francis Pegamagabo, the indigenous sniper in World War I, killed 378 people and captured another 300. A battalion? You're telling me this guy takes out 700 Germans and you're not giving him the VC? And then when he comes home, you're telling him that he can't get a pension for 13 years. And then when he gets that pension, he's got to prove he's not spending it frivolously. And then he's got to sit upright in a chair so he doesn't drown from the effects of the gas. And then he dies in 1952, 8 years before he can cast a ballot in this country. And you're telling me that racism didn't play a role in a man that took out 700 Germans and getting the Victoria Cross? Come on. I was born at night, but not last night.
Bruce, man, I could feel the passion, man. I got that fire too.
Yeah.
I got that fire too. And you're definitely doing what you're passionate about, which is great, because it's easy for the light to go out, right? And I think that's where a lot of guys, we all have friends that have taken their lives. When that light goes out, man, it's very hard to read it.
And I try to reach out, and, life is all about limiting the amount of regret that you have. And you can't get rid of it ever entirely. You're never not going to get rid of the regret. And I know so many guys are like, oh man, I should have made that one more call. I should have done this. I burnt out on this. I was burnt out in Valour. Valour was kind of in limbo for a year and a bit. I just needed a break. And I came back in March, and I'll tell you what, the catalyst of that was the elbows up movement, and seeing how ridiculous it was, and seeing how it's like, my elbows were never down. My elbows were always up, and I always loved Canada, and I never let my guard down. And, I knew that at that time that there was a shift where people were going to believe a lot of silliness in that election. And I was getting very upset and very emotional about it. And I came back to you. I came back to the military community. I came back and started making my posts again. And that was a way of therapy for me. And it really was. And I'm so grateful that I came back into the arms of these incredible followers, and I want to say followers, subscribers, fellow veterans that just basically said, hey, welcome back. I love your stuff. Keep it up. And that meant everything. That meant the world, man. And so I really feel like you've said, and I've taken my game to another level. And I feel like my writing has gotten better. People have said, man, you're starting to get better at this. I have had, editors and help and things like that. I'm not, but you know what? I recognize that I need help and certain things grammatically and stuff like that. And I'm glad.
Well, Bruce, you're playing things down, man. You're missing part of your brain, dude. Like,
yeah,
you can go easy on yourself.
Go
easy on yourself.
I took a commission after, so I always called it my officer's lobotomy.
No. It short-circuited your brain to go on the dark side.
I want to become a little freaking whistleblower. So
shit. So I can't judge. I did the exact same thing when I came home too, minus the traumatic brain injury.
Oh man. Yeah, you don't know.
The lobotomy made me become dude. That's a T-shirt too. The lobotomy made me an officer. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Shit, man. Look, Bruce, there's so much depth.
Literally, we just scratched the surface, Dave.
We're honestly scratching.
You gotta have a series of these.
I'll be honest, I think I'm just going to read the entire openparliament.ca transcript before this episode.
Before you do that. Okay. So before you do that, I just want to say that the big difference in this petition that we have is we have a liberal that has endorsed this, which is massive for this.
And started by the ND, and then.
So the first one was okay. That's the other story. We were essentially starting out, and the government, Anita Anand's office, she just became defense minister after the election, and she was getting questions about us. And her office tried to say that we don't answer questions about far right organizations. I mean, I have General Hillier. My wife is an NDP MP at the time. And I'm like, basically what they wanted to do is paint us like we were the trucker convoy and put us in that same category. And what ended up happening was when we did the petition, we decided, okay, we need it to be somebody from it can't be a conservative, essentially, was the strategy was. Not that it couldn't be, that my wife was also like, in the next room. So it's like, hey, can you sponsor this?
It's so Canadian.
I mean, it was her idea. It was everything. So yeah. So she did. And that was strategically, we had her based on that and that statement that the minister's office came out. Mm-hmm. So going forward, when we do the unanimous consent motion, my partner presents the petition. Erin O'Toole gives the unanimous consent motion to do this independent body review for Jess. He gets the Bloc, the Greens, the NDPs, and the Conservatives are all on board. The only dissenting vote is the Liberals at this time. And so the Liberals have voted it down. In fact, heckled during the run. A member from Prince Edward Island in particular, who I won't name, but has definitely disgraced himself in a sense. And so Erin O'Toole, I love him it was like literally the last thing he did before he left politics. And definitely, after he left as leader, took our cause up and was like a huge champion. And it really did manifest itself after that was, okay, until there's a change of government, until there's a different party, this isn't going to go any further. And that was a general sense. And that kind of led to the, the highs of doing this, getting to the finish line. No, you know what I mean? It's basically like, what do you say? It's like, the documentary being rejected, this being rejected. And it was like, oh, such a deflation of just being like, no. And then not even like a reason, like, just cause. And you're like, okay, cool, great. I've only put thousands of hours into this, mobilized millions of Canadians, but okay, no, and no reason why. And so when this election happened, we thought, okay, we'll restart it. Mark Carney's prime minister now. We'll restart it. Talks of lots more defense spending, things like that. I don't think, like last time during the Afghan war, you could solve the military problem from the decade of darkness of the 90s with money. I think too much damage has been done this time around where the morale is so low. Not to mention now, if you get injured, you're a lump sum. Again, 35 cents on a dollar. Your patriotism only takes you so far in this world.
Was it 400? You're worth 432K approximately.
And that's originally it was 250,000. And it's gone up since with the interest. Yeah, 400 something thousand. And there's the meat chart that was at like 9 years ago. The average lump sum settlement was 22,000. In fact, for 5% of my brain, I got 25%, 25,000. The maximum you can get, nobody's seeing that anyways. It's the insurance company of insurance companies. So again, you're going to have to, again, like Napoleon said, it's amazing what I can do with a piece of tin and some ribbon. And it said that Dwight Eisenhower would have given up the White House for a Medal of Honor, and Patton would have given up his command to have a Medal of Honor, our equivalent of our VC. So the Victoria Cross is, as the pinnacle of pinnacles. And the fact is that we've never even been close to giving it out since we took it over in 93. But once we realized, okay, there's a new government, they're saying a lot of things that, is kind of contradictory to the old government, the Trudeau government. And we decided that we would approach Pauline, being that she would have been Jess's member of parliament. Also, around the time that Jess died, this is also kind of important to the story. His member of parliament was Anthony Rota. I don't know if you remember about him bringing the Nazi to parliament and giving the standing ovation. Well, when Jess died, we asked Anthony Rota to do a statement, and he refused. And during the time that he was refused that, because that happened shortly thereafter, was he was actually planning a trip for a Nazi to go into parliament. So he didn't actually put out a statement for the literal war hero and the first Star of Military Valor recipient to die after the war, to not get it posthumously, and instead planned an all-expensive paid trip for a Nazi.
For an SS Nazi. A real one.
So that was like that really stung because I worked with his office a bit on this. I was really, really upset by that. And so when Pauline got in, one of our board members is from North Bay, Mike Harrison, and he approached her, and she immediately was like, "Yeah, 100%, I'm in." Like, no having to sell it, no being like, "Oh, by the way, just so you know, we've had these issues with liberals in the past." She's like, "That's the past. I'm new. This is it." So all props to her. All credit to her. She's been incredible. She came to the ride and symbolically endorsed the petition at the ride. So that was an incredible thing too, to have her there, and to have, it seems like it feels different this time. If that makes sense. It feels like there's going to be, we're getting further. It took the Korean War veterans almost 30 years to get a medal. It took the Gulf War guys are still going at it 30 plus years later. It took 10 years. I mean, I knew I was in for a fight. And if I'm talking to you as a hologram 30, 40 years from now,
in 15, 20 more years, I'm still going to be doing this, man. I got nothing else to do.
You know
Bruce.
what? Pashtun saying, I love it. You have the watches, we have the time. And I'm gonna endorse that, even though I cannot stand the Taliban or whatever they stand for. That is our mantra. We've got the time.
That is another T-shirt that I'm going to absolutely have to make, Bruce. And I think that is a perfect way to end off for anybody that's listening. It's like, man, it seems, hey, man, I call it Bible time, whatever kind of time you want to call. You got to wait out your enemy, and in your case too, like one of the main principles of being successful in entrepreneurship, I think it was Steve Jobs that said it. He's like, you just need to stay in the game.
Yeah.
Most people quit. They get frustrated. They get their setbacks, and they're like, screw this, I'm out.
Squeaky wheel gets the oil, right?
Exactly.
And you know what? I made a promise to his mom. I made a promise to his brother. I made a promise to Jess, and I'm not going to stop. I'm not. And I don't care what anybody says. Once we get that review, where the cards lay, they lay. If they want to, but I know for a fact that they're not going to let this happen for the next war, because I've made enough noise and I've made it to enough of an issue that it's going to be a lot harder to do this again the next time. And so, I mean, you can have your gatekeeper and, the guy that's posted there, the colonel that's been there for 20 plus years and honors and awards, even though he hasn't been posted out. I thought 5 years was the max. But the guy that's been there 20 years that won't take my emails, that won't take the general's emails, and wants to sit there and hide behind false statistics, fine, okay. But eventually, we'll get to where we need to be. We'll get to the finish line. And I'm excited for that. And if it takes years, like I said, we're ready.
We got the time. Me and you, Bruce, we're sitting pretty, man. I've got a pretty cushy life. I'm not going to lie. So I can write and podcast and advocate until the cows come home. We're the worst thing that ever happened to Veterans Affairs. Like, oh shit, we went to war. We created all these young veterans, and they have the internet. Oh, what do we do?
Right. And you know what? I mean, I feel like I've literally studied this for 5 straight years. I've done the research. I defy to find anyone that is more knowledgeable on this topic than I. And I've literally written the book. I've written the book on it. And I know this inside and out. And I know that the arguments against are flawed and could easily be poked through with holes. And I would love to publicly debate the defense minister or the CDS on this, and to say, I would
on this show. Let's do it on this show.
You know what? Anyway,
I'm in.
Anywhere, any place, anytime. Like, I would love to go at this and say, look, okay. Because I remember when I talked to the last CDS and I was putting out some pretty hard facts and some stats, and he was like, okay, you know your stuff. And he couldn't just,
Bruce,
try to, this wasn't, this isn't,
they're there, Corporal.
Yeah.
They're there.
Yeah.
Let
So,
the men from RMC figure this out.
And so anytime, any place, I would love to debate on this and try to actually see their perspective and look at their arguments and have them argue against mine and argue back. But that would be honestly, like, that would be the pinnacle of this whole thing, because I know I could win that.
Well, let's manifest and let's make this
Like,
happen.
you know,
Everybody that's listening right now, I need you to close your eyes and manifest this debate happening on the show live in Ottawa. I can already see it. Even if it's 15 years from now, we're doing it, and we'll get that VC come hell or high water. So Bruce, where can folks go to sign the petition, and where can folks go to get more information?
Look at our stuff on Valour and the Presidency. I mean, we're on Facebook. If you don't use Facebook, we're on Instagram. I think it's 100th Canadian Cross. That's pretty much the two that we're using. We have a website as well. We're looking at trying to get more done in that sense. So the website's there. Make sure if you post anything, make sure you use the hashtag #JessForVC. You can find it on the House of Commons itself if you just searched petition 6661. I was a little hesitant about a 666 but you know what? We're on the highway to hell. What can I say? So, and man, we're really excited, and we've got a shot of energy in our group. We have our quarterly meetings, and now it's not just talking about the weather or anything. We're actually planning, doing things. We're talking about getting shots with soldiers back and going with the general. We've got a list of ideas of other guys we're going to do shots to. Basically looking at a few things on the horizon, hopefully getting the book published and getting as many signatures as possible. And just working on that stuff.
Love it, man. Folks, make sure to go sign the petition. It literally takes like 2 minutes. Just go sign it. I mean, if you're watching this and you haven't signed it, like, you can pretty much assume that you're on board with having this happen. So just go take the literal 2 minutes it takes to sign a petition, and let's get Jess the VC, because this is how things work, and this is what I've learned in working with Americans. They know how to play this game way better than we do. You've obviously got a lot more experience and got some results by sending emails and showing up. If we do it at scale, they're not going to be able to ignore this, and this is going to be good for the country as a whole, because it's not a left-right issue. It is a issue that relates to the country and the soul of the country. If we forget that there's left wing, right wing, same bird, like, this is what we're talking about here. It doesn't matter. This isn't a left-right issue. This is a Canadian issue that needs exposure.
The crazy part is the Americans have done this twice. Have done this under both a Republican and Democrat. I mean, literally, the Republicans and the Democrats can work together on this.
They know how to play the game really well.
But this is insane, because they don't get along on anything, and yet on this they do. So, I mean, it's clear that if they can get along on this, there's no reason we can't.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you on that. So, Bruce, I really appreciate your insights. I think we're going to have another chat.
Of course.
In the near future.
I'm enjoying this.
Even if it's just about the theories as to why we went to war and what we're doing moving forward. I love that shit too, and the historical aspect and the political aspect of everything. And we could also talk about teaching the next generation of youth as well. Whatever it is, it'll be an interesting conversation. So thanks so much, and thanks for everything that you do. And folks, don't forget to follow Bruce. Go to, what's the Instagram handle?
Victoria Cross.
I'll put the link here, folks, in the description, and all the other links that pertain to the episode. And don't forget to obliterate the subscribe button, hit the bell notification, make sure to like, make sure to comment. I know it's a lot, folks, but it's free content. You got to pay your dues. And don't forget to keep tuning in and sharing this content as widely as possible. And lastly, don't forget to train hard and fight easy. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.